So, welcome everybody. I think a lot of people have already joined the session. Let's just wait maybe like 30 seconds to a minute until we get started so that everyone has the opportunity to join. Okay, so it's 1 minute past 3 o'clock. So I think we're going to get started. So welcome everyone to this webinar on how OSINT technologies can maximize collaboration across investigative teams. This webinar is provided to you by Data Expert and Black Dot Solutions, and it will be recorded. If you have any questions in the meantime, there is no possibility to ask it via your microphone, but please ask them via the chat. At the end of this session, we have reserved some time for the Q&A. So we will wait until answering all of the questions until the end of the session. Antonia, please, next slide. So the content of today is an introduction of the companies, so of Data Expert and of Black Dot Solutions, and of course also an introduction of the speakers. We will then talk about OSINT and collaboration, why it is so important, then move on to the use case and a demonstration. And as mentioned, at the end, we have time for a Q&A. Next slide, Antonia. Thank you. So first, an introduction about the speakers. I will start off with myself. My name is Helmi van den Brink. I'm a consultant at the analytics department at Data Expert. I've been with the company for 8 years. And as a consultant, I know a lot about the analytical side of the investigations. So we work a lot together with tools like iBase and Anders Notebook, and also on the OSINT side. And today I'm here with Antonia Edmonds from Black Dot Solutions. Antonia, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Helmi, and thank you very much to Data Expert for co-hosting this today. So I'm Antonia Edmonds. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer, which means I'm responsible for the commercial side of the business at Black Dot, including all of our customers who are using Videris today. My career has been spent helping organizations make sense of online behavioral information to drive insights across lots of different use cases in the last 3 years, investigations.
Thank you, Antonia. So now an introduction of Data Expert. Data Expert is supporting our customers in crime investigation and data security. So we provide the right technology and expertise in different areas. In this way, we try to make our contribution to a safer society, and we have been doing so for the past 35 years. Next slide, please, Antonia. These fields of expertise that we supply the solutions in are in digital forensics, analytics, cybersecurity, of course, OSINT, and also crypto. We don't only supply solutions, we also train, support, and provide consultancy to our users. The headquarters is based in the Netherlands, with also an office in Denmark and in Sweden. And since recently, we have an office in Poland as well. And with all of these offices, we provide the solutions and the services to the Benelux, Scandinavia, and the Caribbean. So that's all for Data Experts. So now let's head over to an introduction of Black Dot Solutions.
Thank you very much. Well, we are a proud partner of Data Expert. For those of you who haven't come across us before, we're a UK-based software company. We're just based outside Cambridge. And our platform, Videris, is an investigations platform. And we'll be discussing this in more detail today, which really helps organizations collect, analyze, and visualize information that is publicly available or commercially licensable within a single platform supporting complex investigations. Originally, Videris was designed for the intelligence community, and now it's being used across the public and private sector. That's in banks, government agencies, law enforcement, as well as large corporates and risk consultancies. So with that, I think I'm going to dive straight in and talk to you about the main topic today, which is around collaboration and technology and tooling to support it. So, in terms of where is OSINT collaboration needed, and I'd like to start really with a bit of an example of what can happen when different departments or agencies don't collaborate effectively in a kind of high stakes, complex threat. So in the morning of the 11th of September 2001, 4 planes flying over the US were seized simultaneously by hijackers. As the BBC report put it at the time, they were used as giant guided missiles to crash into landmark buildings in New York and Washington. This event, which of course we're all very familiar with, had devastating consequences and triggered a sequence of events that impacted the whole world. The 9/11 Commission report, which was published 3 years later, extensively analysed the events leading up to those attacks and identified several instances where, amongst other things, of course, insufficient collaboration between government agencies contributed to the failure to prevent those attacks. So, for example, the CIA had information about 2 of the hijackers entering the US, but this wasn't, communicated adequately to the FBI. The FBI, in turn, their Phoenix office had concerns about potential terrorist training at flight schools. But this information, again, wasn't adequately shared with the Federal Aviation Authority or other FBI offices and agencies. And finally, later that year, the inquiry into the terrorist attacks by the House and Senate Select Committees in the US also spoke about technical barriers, including the lack of shared databases or architecture that could bridge federal, state and local government databases. So, these siloed operations meant that, these different agencies were operating often in isolation with different tools, different data and intelligence, and ultimately leading to the inefficient use of resources and unfortunately missed opportunities to connect those disparate pieces of intelligence. Now, the consequences of this are very well known. The findings of this report led to several recommendations, one of which was the implementation of new information sharing protocols and technologies so that teams could collaborate more effectively and efficiently. And so, in telling you this, it's, I absolutely acknowledge, of course, that there's, no single improvement that would have stopped 9/11 from happening. But, this example, I think, highlights the vital importance of effective teamwork and information sharing in those kind of complex, high stakes situations. So, of course, there are many more examples where collaboration is crucial, even within a single organization. Sharing data or findings, as well as having common tools to help conduct investigations, are also very important in cases like the ones you see on this screen. So, anti-money laundering investigations. And the Netherlands, of course, has been world leading in some of the public-private partnerships that are underway, and of course, it's extremely beneficial for banks to be able to share information and between themselves and with law enforcement around typologies, information gathered around anti-money laundering networks. And even within a single organization, the ability for multiple teams to fuse internal and external data together to be able to investigate collaboratively, share that information internally, again, to help prevent as well as investigate those types of issues is very important. Secondly, fraud, of course. We know that scammers and fraudsters are rarely isolated. So joining up dots between incidents is clearly extremely important, and being able to share information on incidents, accounts, again, building out typologies, and then sharing this both internally, but also with law enforcement can help stop and make a more effective defense against these things happening. And finally, vetting and due diligence. Those organisations that vet employees or of course perform due diligence on suppliers or clients need to be able to share those findings with other departments internally, so that work's not duplicated, so that those people who've been refused or blacklisted and so on, are not onboarded elsewhere. And of course, there's some high-profile cases, especially in the UK recently, around police vetting, and so the importance of being able to again share those findings between forces and government agencies, so that again issues don't get run into, which can cause huge reputational and other damage to those organisations. Of course, we believe that technology is crucial to being able to support better collaboration, both internally between teams, but also between organisations in the public and private sector. And arguably, OSINT in itself is already key to improving collaboration, because the data, by its very nature, is already in the public domain. So the ability, therefore, to share the information that comes from and share insights that comes from open source can help here. It's easier to overcome some of those jurisdictional, legal, organizational, even financial barriers when sharing information that may otherwise exist. Additionally, technology can support by removing other barriers that may exist. So there are some examples here on this chart. It's well known that exploiting data from the live unstructured internet from many siloed different external and internal data sources is really very hard without the right tools. Or without having, unless there are significant specialist skills. So having access to easy to use OSINT technology means that insights can be more readily achieved and more readily available within an organization without having to rely on those very deep skilled specialist resources. Secondly, around visualization. So the ability to condense large amounts of information and draw insights from it, and to be able to share findings and make decisions, it can be very well supported by visualization tools. So when we're talking about complex threats and risk, we're often talking about highly networked data sets and criminal networks, so individuals who are linked to others through associations, corporate record structures, and so on. So the ability to visualize that data intuitively can really help drive better decision making. Thirdly, the ability to fuse data. So again, bringing together multiple external data sources and even fusing that with internal data means greater visibility, better access to more data, and a consistent way for multiple investigators or teams to leverage intelligence and share insights. And then finally, around efficiency. So technology enables you to put controls in place on otherwise siloed manual efforts. So workflows can be streamlined, processes and outputs made consistent, and all of this with the full transparency of access controls, sourcing, auditing. That means collaboration can be efficient, secure, and again focused on outcomes. So before I dive into a demo of what this looks like in practice and take one of those examples, just quickly, much of this will come to life in that next bit. But in terms of what Videris does, Videris is an all-in-one platform for OSINT investigations, and it helps investigators collect, analyze, and visualize OSINT data faster and more effectively. Some of the core capabilities, which I'll touch on shortly, is having that live access to the unstructured data from the internet, as well as commercially available databases. So being able to search across multiple data sources in the surface, deep and dark web at the same time, being able to visualize that information in a network view. So being able to map out corporate record structures and overlay that with publicly available social media data can be extremely powerful there. And then finally, of course, providing some of those collaboration tools that I mentioned. So the ability to invite reviewers to review data as you're investigating it, the ability to share cases, and all with access controls in place so that multiple investigators can potentially collaborate on the same case, or the ability to share findings with reporting access, report sharing, to again support better information sharing and collaboration during investigations. So with that, I'm going to now, hopefully, this will work, going to show you a bit what this looks like in real life. I will start with giving you a bit of a live view here. I'll then move into a demo because I can't multitask and talk and demo at the same time. But to begin with, this is Videris. So Videris is an all-in-one platform for investigations. You'll see this. So here I'm opening up the chart interface. This is the sort of visualization chart where you can start to map out networks and organizations. And as well as a charting interface, we have a search interface as well. So I mentioned the ability to search and collect data across a range of out-of-the-box and integrated data sources that includes the surface, deep, and dark web. So here, for example, you might start searching by a person, a company, and again, you can already see that providing this kind of consolidated access to these different sources can help really speed up some of that time, but also provide that consistency that means larger teams can work in a more kind of sustainable and consistent way. So here then are some of the examples of the data sources that are integrated with Videris that we can search across. So from officer records for corporate records information, search engines, global range of search engines, news media for adverse news and news articles, risk databases, including the Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, and so on, as well as sort of open sanctions and other providers, and finally also publicly available social media as well. So I'm going to jump into a demo that I did earlier, and then if there are questions, we can jump back into the live platform as well. So here then, we're going to start with an investigation with an online username. Now, in many cases, of course, most of our customers are starting an investigation from a name or a company name. That's a common example. But there may be instances where an online username, particularly in a fraud example, or even in a vetting case, you might have a username. So you can start with anything in order to be able to map and build out someone's the information about someone and identify that risk. In this particular example, I wanted to start with a username because this shows then how we can start to pull back information from a wide range, more than 200 social media platforms, and bring back those profiles that use that username. We know that people tend to use the same username across platforms. This will pull back all of those profiles that have this username. And this is happening in real time. So once we initiate that search, it's going to go out to those platforms and bring back those profiles that match that username as a first step. So we're just waiting for that to enrich now. And when that happens, you'll see that there are about 5 social media profiles that have this username. So we're going to add those to the chart. And you can see that that's brought back these 5 profiles. 4 of them have pictures. They all look to be the same person. And we can now lay this out in a slightly different way, so more intuitively. And here you can also see that it is brought back a number of names, the same name across all those different platforms. So we can now have a name that we can go after. We can merge this data. And as you can see, we're starting to build a bit of a profile of who this is with, at the moment, social media data. So we can, that profile, that entity there, you can see building up the information that we have. So now that we've, now that we've got this name, that was mentioned that he has, he's a businessman, he's got a number of interests in Switzerland and Brazil. So now we're going to see if we can find some corporate records information associated with him. So we've initiated the search, as I showed you at the beginning, so we can do that directly from the chart. And this now then is looking for this name, and we are using all of the information in the chart as known intelligence to help prioritize those results that are going to be more relevant. So we know a few things from that. We know his name, we know a username handle, we may also have had a location in there. And so what that means is that as we run any kind of search, we're using that to bump up the more relevant results. So you're not scrolling through, pages and pages of results to find the right ones. The other thing that we're doing when we come back with results is we are looking at the results that have been returned, and we are categorizing them. Where did they come from? What source are they from? And we're also doing some level of entity extraction. So we're recognizing entities, common entities that are coming up in those results, and we are extracting those down there on the left-hand side and ranking them by how many times they appear. So that starts to identify entities that may be of interest, that may help you spot a new avenue or a new person that may be relevant to your investigation. So this is all about automating what we can, but ensuring the investigator is in control of what they're doing, but making it easier for them to find those relevant pieces of information. So here we just added a Twitter profile to the chart because that was a different username. So we think that might be interesting. And now we're going to look at that corporate records data. So there are a few records here. Many of them are coming back. We've drilled that down to go from Moody's Orbis data. And we're going to add these officer records now to the chart. Now, looking at officer information or corporate records information via portals and via corporate registry portals is, time consuming. It's not intuitive. It's pretty hard to get a full picture of really what's going on and connect those dots. Here you can see we're now going to enrich all of these officer records to see the associated companies, because now we've got those details. We can now see what companies are associated with those records. While we're waiting for that to happen, we're going to look at the X profile as well, because that came back when we searched for the name, and we'll be able to show you some of the additional X functionality there. In the meantime, what you can see is happening is that the corporate records enrichments are coming back. That's bringing back a couple of, if I pause it there, locations. So we've got locations in Belgium. We've got a location here in Brazil. We've got there seems to be a Swiss corporate record entity here. So you can see some of those where that data is coming from, where those registrations are, and this is pulling out also the companies that are associated. And the officers. So we're grouping that where there's lots of information so it doesn't muddle up the chart too much. But you can start to see now that we're building up a bit of a picture that this person, has extensive business interests in multiple countries around the world. It's helping us build up this picture here. So you can see that there are some officerships in common between a couple of those entries by some of those links. While we do that, we'll look at the Twitter profile here, the X profile, apologies, in a bit more detail. So again, where this information is publicly, where a profile is public, we can extract quite a bit of intelligence from that information. So again, here we have the same picture. We therefore confident it's the same and the right person. There are a few bubbles on this chart that are worth pointing out. There are these 3 affiliation bubbles. We'll show one of them in a bit more detail in a minute. One of these will be accounts he follows. Another will be accounts that follow him. And the third group will be accounts that follow each other. So that lets you see very quickly potentially some of the closer relationships that may be worth exploring. So again, identifying where some of those relationships are, that can be very useful in exposing sort of in sanctions investigations, in asset tracing investigations, finding some of those relationships and associations that are not necessarily very obvious can be really very useful. So here we are also going to what we're doing here is looking into the explore functionality. So what this is doing is, I think if you saw, I went from the name to the little explorer bar. One of the challenges, especially with social media investigations, is the ability to, look at content or look at a profile in the network, without compromising security. So, those working in government and law enforcement, and even those working in financial services, it's extremely important. In fact, it can even be a criminal offence to tip off someone you're investigating that you are looking at them. And of course, that can be extremely obvious on social media accounts in particular. So what the explorers are letting you do is we are rebuilding that profile, rebuilding the key information, and even being able to rebuild those posts, again, where this is publicly available, in a way that means you can look at it entirely securely without being exposed to the wider internet and without being exposed to that subject of interest. So here, you can see we've summarized him. We can see how many followers, how many followings. We can see his, and we can see some of his last posts. So you can start to have a really good sense of what someone is posting. Again, useful in vetting and in due diligence investigations. So here we've got, we've been able to review that in a bit more detail. Here is a good example of being able to see all of the different people that he is following in case that wanted to be investigated further, and so on. Okay, so we've looked at that. One of the sort of core priorities that we have is, it's about providing investigators with all the relevant information in a way that is easy to draw insights from, but providing also tools to surface insights more quickly. So it's about helping you collect more data that's relevant without overwhelming investigators, but now also building in, insights capabilities to draw more intelligence from that data. So here you can see on this insights tool bar panel, we've got two things that can be done. One is to look for similarity. Now, in this case, of course, we've got a number of entities on the chart with the same name, Bernard de la Guiche. So in that case, that may not be, quite so revealing here. But let's say, for example, you have two people, you've enriched two separate corporate records charts or two separate social networks. Using that can help highlight people in common or organizations in common that, again, would otherwise be hard or very time consuming to find manually. We also have this risks toggle. So we're going to turn this on now. I don't think it's going to highlight anything at this time, but what the risk insights piece is doing is we are running checks in the background against the entities on the chart to see if there are any known risk indicators. Currently, what that means is that we're looking at SIC codes, so the industry codes for known risky industries. We're looking at known risky jurisdictions, according to FATF. And we are also looking at the age of officer records, for example, anyone over 100 or very young, and that can be an indicator of information being, potentially, concerning information registered in the corporate registries. And we can also check it against sanctions, and we're also checking against sanctions databases and other risk databases. So if those names appear in those databases, you'll get a red exclamation mark or a red halo around those results. So as I said, nothing showing as yet, but we will start to see that come to life in a minute. So we're now going to go a bit deeper into the corporate records trees, again, to be able to really see, is there any associated risk with this individual or their organizations, and map out a bit more of that ownership structure to find the beneficial owner of some of these entities. So again, much as we did before, it's a couple of clicks. You can bring back the subsidiaries, other companies in the corporate network, officer records, and so on. And again, here you can see some dotted lines showing some of common results coming back. So I just jumped ahead there. What we're doing now is we're going to do what's called a risk search. So one of those companies came back with a red risk indicator, which means that this is something we want to look into further. This is something, an organization that could potentially be risky. So what we are doing here is, like we did a search earlier, we are now doing something called a risk search. So in the same way, we're going across the live open internet, we're going across some of the out-of-the-box risk news, leaks, data bases, and so on. And then we are categorizing the results that come back on the left with the risk categories on the left-hand side. Now, these could, of course, be personalized, so organizations could, use risk terms that are relevant for them. But currently, we are using our out-of-the-box standard risk terms here. So we're categorizing those results. We're also using the intelligence from the chart to make sure that we're finding the most relevant results. And then we are providing that information on the right-hand panel. So the same categories and so on as you saw before. So here we can now open up one of these articles. This is from the ICIJ. Interestingly, if you Google Bernard de la Guiche via Google, there is very little risk. You're going to have to go several pages in to find anything that indicates any risk against this individual. I'm not, by the way, for a minute suggesting that there is any criminal activity here. This is just an example. But here, we've now been able to. One of the first results that came back on that risk search is this ICIJ article. It's talking about potentially using tax havens, and he was in fact mentioned in the Pandora papers. So we get a lot more, bit of an indication there's potentially some risk associated with him, and certainly, one of his associated companies. It's a browser. Of course, we can translate results on the fly, making sure that you can read those results. And just as before, we can, any kind of relevant articles, relevant risk results, we can now add to the entity. So this isn't going to populate this all over the chart, but we're adding these insights to the entity. In this case, that's Solvay. So here again, you can now see that Solvay has risk flags associated with it, and the entity report here has those articles that we added to it. So again, you can now, as an organization, this is sourced, it's captured, and somebody else coming in and investigating or coming in to review this investigation will be able to see the intelligence that has been added to the entity, and this can be exported. The risk indicate the risk categories are there, and all of that information is also time stamped, etc. Before we move on as well, and get to the end of this, there are also, I've shown you obviously the chart and the search capability. We also can visualize this information in different ways, of course. So, especially relevant when you've got large amounts of corporate records information or other data on the chart, it can make sense to visualize that in a grid or table format. So that's what we're doing here. This is now showing everything on the chart in a grid format. You can filter this accordingly. You can find entities in here again, and then you can, of course, export data as well. So here you can see, you can navigate around, filter that down, and get more of an insight. So, we've built up a good picture of this person. I think there's some, certainly there's been some associated risk. We've identified the social media profiles. We've identified and uncovered his corporate records footprint. We've also, identified some associated risk with some of those organizations. And at this point, you may feel that this, investigation is complete and it's now time to share those findings with someone else in the organization. So we are in the process of building out additional user types in the platform. So reviewer types, you can come in and be given reviewer only access to specific cases, again, to aid in that collaboration. Or of course, many of our customers are exporting those charts, combining it with potentially internal intelligence or putting it into a case management system, and sharing those to either to law enforcement or to other areas internally. So here it's extremely easy to export the chart, and again, that will then save that as a PDF or a other format, again, for further dissemination. That really is what I'd hoped to show in terms of the use case and the demo. I'm extremely happy to take questions, and I can also dive back into the platform if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks so much, Antonia. It was very good demo, very clear. We have received a couple of questions, so that's very nice. But please, if you have any other questions, keep them coming. So one of the questions was actually pretty much at the start of when you started your demo. It's about if the platforms at Fideris is ever able to connect to an individual to an advertisement ID. Is that something that will be added to Fideris or possible?
I mean, and that's interesting because we're hearing a fair bit about that. So, that's, ad tech data. There are, increasing numbers of providers who are able to, provide quite extensive, particularly relevant for tracking devices in locations, and then, of course, being able to link those devices to, other identifiers. So we don't currently have none of our out-of-the-box data sources are ad tech. Fideris has been built to be able to connect to any data source that's got an API. So that could be an internal SQL database, but it also can be, any external database with an API. And so, we anticipate that, should a customer want to do that, and we would be extremely happy to work with them. A customer would also be able to do that themselves. What we found is that, of course, that that data is extremely valuable. It's also very sensitive. It's also very expensive. So we've not yet done that, but and there's nothing yet out of the box. But there would be nothing to stop someone bringing in their own existing subscription, or for us to partner with a provider, if that made sense.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. So one of the other questions was asked when you were looking for corporate records, and especially for Telegram. So what is exactly the open source part of Telegram? Are those the public groups that you're looking at or that you can find?
So Telegram is one of the data sources that comes, is part of our social media integrations. And again, that is, we're able to bring back profile information, associated groups, and information on sort of select public groups. That's capability we particularly, is available for our law enforcement customers and for sort of more criminal type use cases. But yes, in all cases, we're getting access to information that is publicly available.
All right, thanks. Another question about the social media platforms, because someone asked, social media platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn, they are keeping their database more and more closed. How does this tool or Black Dot Solutions for Fideris deal with that?
I mean, indeed, it is increasingly challenging to get even publicly available data from some of those sources. We partner with a provider whose real sole focus is in providing that information. And one of the we found that is the most reliable way of doing it. The reality is that it is challenging. There are often challenges in being able to get that information back, but it's that information we found still available. One of the benefits of having a platform that not only looks at multiple social media platforms but also other data sources is where that information is lacking or being harder to find is to be able to combine it and find it through other methods. What I would say is that Fideris is a tool that it's very important for most of our customers' use cases that it is transparent where that data comes from, and that it is, we are, doing this in a way that, in theory could be done, albeit very difficultly manually. We're providing some of those automation capabilities and integrations that accelerate that and bring that information back. But yes, I mean, it's a challenge for everyone. Everyone's facing the same challenges, but I think again we are really focused on providing that reliability in those data sources with the integrations and other capabilities that we have.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. And then there was one more question about looking for or doing the OSINT search function. So are you able to do that in another language, like in Greek or Indian with foreign letter types?
Yes, I mean, we are sort of script and language agnostic. We have users all over the world. Customers working in other languages and scripts. So yes, it can be done in that. And of course, as you saw, results will be pulled back accordingly. You can translate results, but yes, in short.
Yeah. And then another question about the translation part. So you can translate to any language you would like. Is that translation then done via Google Translate? Is it shared with Google in any way? How does that work?
It is done via your browser tools. That's how we're translating content today. So you can use your own, translation layers, but that's being used through the browser translate function. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. For now, the questions via the Q&A have been answered. Let me see if there are any other questions coming in. I don't see anyone typing anything, but of course we have other questions that we ran into quite often. You already touched on that we're working with data providers, especially for social media, but also for the other data. Can you share anything about that? What type of data providers are in Videris?
Absolutely. So, we are focused on providing a wide range of data sources. I mentioned that our customers are serving, are in different sectors, doing a wide range of use cases. And, on top of that, we've made it easy to get data in and out of the platform as well for further customization. But in short, I mentioned at the beginning, we're, accessing data across from all the major search engines. We also have a number of data partners and providers that we're using. I think perhaps easier also to explain is some of the premium providers that we're working with. So, these are providers where we would have an integration, but a customer would be, would subscribe directly to those providers. So, for example, Moody's Orbis for corporate records data, their grid database, those are good examples where, if you're subscribers to those data sources, we can plug those in here. The same would be true for Dun & Bradstreet. We also have, partnerships with Dow Jones Factiva, London Stock Exchange Group, and others. We have, again, out of the box, what we try and do is we have at least 2 or 3 data sources that are looking at the same type of data, and that have as global coverage as possible. So, you saw the, OCCRP, ICIJ, open corporates, open sanctions, all of those data sources come out of the box. But again, if those particularly, some of our financial services customers, they will have subscriptions to other data sources that they would prefer to plug in. So it's a wide variety. I mentioned the social media partnerships that we have. We also have a dark web partnership and capability. So yes, I think there are around 30 sources out of the box with the ability to add others. It's very transparent too. You can see what those data sources are and where that data is being retrieved from in the platform, as you would expect.
Yeah, precisely. And because Videris is developed that way, you can always create connectors to either internal sources or maybe
Absolutely.
Sources that are more suitable for the work that you're doing.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So one of the questions that we run into quite often is that people are asking what is happening to the data when a profile or content has been deleted from the internet. Does Videris store it anywhere, like historical data?
Yeah, so we as a company are not, storing data for use in investigations, but all information that an investigator is accessing and putting into their investigation as part of their searching, collecting, enriching, and visualizing is stored in that case. So that information exists. If it is later deleted, a record is kept in your investigation. So you will be able to see when that information was retrieved. We're sourcing and capturing everything. So there is an audit trail, an audit function, which means that, everything is captured. So you can see that that existed at that time, even if it is deleted later. We are, for obvious GDPR and other reasons, we are not in ourselves. And, philosophically, we don't believe you can put the whole internet into a box and provide that as a service. So, we are not collecting and storing that information for use across our clients, but you can absolutely see that in your own investigations. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Let's see. I'm not really sure if it was mentioned during the demonstration, but can you work together in Videris?
Of course, and I should have said that a bit better. I think it's largely due to my own access in that environment. Yes, you can. Of course, we can have share cases with other users, and we're increasing this functionality all the time. So I think I mentioned at the end, we're also creating, as well as we have, admin users. There can be unlimited admin users in an account. We have investigator type users, and that's somebody with a license who can conduct investigations. And we are in the process of releasing reviewer licenses. So this would be, individuals internal or even external to your organization that you can share a specific case or all cases or a team's cases with, that they can then review securely, that review process is tracked and logged as well, but they can't touch anything, they can't change anything, they can't do anything else. So there's a few different ways that you can do that. Different people can access cases, share cases, but also you can share reporting only effectively access with cases as well.
Yeah, it's a very nice feature to add, because I think in investigations, it's always mandatory, like the 4I principle. It's like translated very literally from Dutch, but that you have someone to review your case. So I think that's very nice that will be added.
Yeah.
Okay. There are no new questions in the chat, but I do have one more. And that's regarding the monitoring. Is it possible to monitor in Vadaris?
That's a very good question, and something we are asked about a fair amount. Now, of course, monitoring can mean very different things to different people. It can mean monitoring for content online, risky content, monitoring for events. But it can also mean monitoring for changes in an investigation, whether that's a new news article, a new, corporate records, officer record, a change in company name, for example. So we don't have that available today. It's something we're actively working with some clients with in scoping out, what that might look like. And it's something that is on our kind of medium term, roadmap plans for next year. I think what we are looking to do there is that is kind of that second piece of what I was talking about. So, if a new risk article, news article, a new corporate piece of corporate record information, or a new change in associations on social media, that would mean that you as a user would be able to potentially reset how quickly that was to be refreshed, and then how to be alerted. Today, you can, of course, rerun the search, yourself, and you will be alerted to changes in the results that came back. So you can do that on a somewhat manual basis. We're looking at ways to automate more of that, but at the same time, not generate a whole lot of noise. Of course, there's new information on the internet all the time. That could very quickly, if you have lots of cases, become extremely noisy. So something that we're really actively working on there.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, alerting is always a big topic.
Definitely is.
All right. So I think we're actually at the end of this presentation and demonstration of the Vadaris platform. So I hope that everything was very clear for everyone. Here are our contact details. You can reach out to either data expert, to me, or to Antonia if you have any questions or any remarks. I believe that the survey link will be added in the chat. I can see that my colleague Noor is actually typing. So we would really appreciate it if you could fill out the survey link for us to let us know what you thought of this webinar, if you have any thoughts on new webinars for in the future. And yeah, well, of course, thank you all for joining. And thank you, Antonia, for this great presentation and for answering all of the questions. And of course, we hope to see you again in the future.
Thank you very much, and please do get in touch. We'd be very happy to speak to anybody interested in looking in more detail. We can also arrange additional demonstrations, trial access as appropriate. So please do get in touch. We'd be delighted to hear from you. And in the meantime, thank you again, Data Expert, for setting this all up.
Yes, and thank you as well. And enjoy the rest of your day today, of course.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bye.